The graduation dinner was supposed to be Amina's night. The table was full, plates clinking, people smiling, saying, "Congratulations." Her certificate rested beside her chair, carefully placed like it mattered. At first, Amina smiled politely, saying thank you when someone looked her way. But slowly the attention shifted. Every compliment turned toward Thandi. "Thandi is so smart. Thandi will go far. We always knew Thandi would be special." Amina nodded along, her smile growing smaller with every sentence. Her mother laughed loudly, telling stories that made Thandi look perfect. Her father added jokes. The relatives leaned in, fully entertained. Amina sat there quietly, hands folded in her lap, feeling invisible at her own graduation dinner. She told herself to be patient. Just one night. Just get through it. Then it happened. Her mother's smile suddenly dropped. She looked straight at Amina and said almost casually, "Honestly, we wish you were never born." The words hit the table like a slap. For a second the room went silent. Then someone laughed. Another joined. Soon it sounded like a joke everyone understood except Amina. Her ears rang. Her chest tightened. She looked around, waiting for someone to stop it, to say it was wrong. No one did. Her father stared at his plate. Thandi smirked. The laughter kept going. Amina felt something inside her crack. Not loudly. Quietly. Like a final thread snapping. She smiled, stood up slowly, and said she needed some air. As she walked away, the noise faded behind her. But the words stayed, echoing in her head, changing something in her forever. No one said a word after the laughter. Not one person looked shocked enough to stop it. Amina stood there, still smiling, because she didn't know what else to do. Her eyes searched the table, slowly, carefully, hoping to find one face that cared. Her father wouldn't look at her. He kept his eyes on his plate, moving his food around like it suddenly mattered more than his daughter. That hurt almost more than the words. If he had shouted, if he had defended her, maybe the pain would feel lighter. But his silence felt like agreement. Her sister Thandi didn't even try to hide it. She leaned back in her chair with a small smirk, enjoying the moment. It was the same look she always had when Amina was embarrassed or blamed. Amina knew that look too well. Said, "This is what you deserve." The relatives followed the mood. Someone waved their hand and said, "Oh, don't be so serious." Another joked, "You know how mothers talk." Laughter bubbled again, softer this time, but just as cruel. Amina felt her face burn. Her hands started to shake under the table, so she folded them tighter, pressing her nails into her skin to stay calm. This was her graduation dinner. Years of studying, of staying up late, of pushing herself when no one believed in her. All of it was being crushed into a joke. She wanted to scream. She wanted to ask, "Why am I never enough?" But her voice felt trapped in her chest. So she did what she had learned to do her whole life. She smiled. "I just need to use the bathroom," she said softly, her voice surprisingly steady. No one stopped her. No one asked if she was okay. A few people nodded, already turning back to their conversations. As she walked away, she could still hear Thandi laughing, her mother talking, the dinner continuing as if nothing had happened. The bathroom door clicked shut behind her, and that was when her body gave up. Her smile collapsed. Her legs felt weak, and she leaned against the sink, gripping its edge. Her reflection stared back at her, eyes wide, lips trembling, a stranger wearing a fake calm face. Her breathing came fast and shallow. She pressed a hand to her mouth to keep from crying out loud. Tears finally spilled over. She slid down onto the closed toilet lid, hugging herself as her shoulders shook. Her chest ached like something heavy was sitting on it. This wasn't just about tonight. It was every ignored report card, every comparison, every time she was told to be more like Thandi. But tonight hurt differently. Tonight was supposed to prove she mattered. Sitting there in that cold bathroom, Amina understood something clearly for the first time. Her biggest achievement meant nothing to the people who were supposed to love her the most. And that realization hurt deeper than any insult. It wasn't loud or dramatic. It was quiet, heavy. And it stayed with her long after the tears slowed, changing the way she saw her family forever. Sitting alone, Amina's mind drifted back to all the moments that led to this night. It felt like her whole life flashed in front of her, not as happy memories, but as small wounds she had learned to live with. From as far back as she could remember, she was never just Amina. She was always Amina compared to Thandi. If Thandi got a high mark, it was celebrated. If Amina did well, it was expected, or worse, ignored. "Why can't you be more like your sister?" was a sentence she heard so often it stopped hurting, until nights like this. Thandi was the miracle child. That's what everyone called her. The one who could do no wrong. When she made a mistake, it was brushed off as stress or pressure. When Amina made one, it became a family discussion. If something broke in the house, Amina was blamed first. If there was tension, she was told she caused it. Even when she stayed quiet, even when she tried her best, she somehow became the problem. There were moments when Amina waited for praise like a child waits for rain in a dry season. She remembered coming home with good grades, holding her report card tightly, hoping for a smile or a hug. Her mother would glance at it and say, "That's good," then turn to ask Thandi about her day. No applause. No pride. Just silence. Over time, Amina learned not to expect anything. Expectation only led to disappointment. As she grew older, the labels became clearer. Thandi was planned, wanted, celebrated. Amina was the mistake. The one people talked about in lowered voices. The one whose birth was always connected to stress, to hardship, to bad timing. Even family jokes carried that truth. "You know, Amina came at the wrong time," someone would laugh, and everyone else would smile like it was harmless. Her graduation should have been different. It should have rewritten the story. She had worked hard, often alone, pushing herself when no one was cheering her on. She thought, maybe tonight they will see me. Maybe tonight I will finally be enough. But instead, her success was treated like an inconvenience. Something that delayed dinner. Something that took attention away from Thandi. That dinner wasn't just another painful moment. It was the moment everything became clear. The bathroom tears, the laughter, her mother's words. They all fit together like pieces of a puzzle. For the first time, Amina stopped asking what she did wrong. She stopped wondering why she wasn't loved the same. She realized the truth was never about her. That night, something shifted inside her. Not anger. Not revenge. Awareness. Quiet awakening. She understood that she had spent years trying to earn love from people who had already decided she didn't deserve it. And in that understanding, painful as it was, a new thought formed for the first time. Maybe I don't need their approval to be worth something. The unwanted child finally saw herself clearly, and that changed everything. Amina did not scream that night. She did not argue. She did not beg for an apology or try to explain her pain. Something in her had gone very quiet. After the tears dried, she washed her face, took one deep breath, and walked back into the house like nothing had happened. The laughter from the dinner was still echoing in the other room, but it felt far away now, like noise from another life. She went straight to her room and closed the door softly. For a long moment she just stood there looking around. The small room held years of her life, books she studied from, clothes she folded carefully, memories she never felt safe sharing. Her hands moved on their own. She opened her bag and began to pack. Not everything, just what mattered. Few clothes, her certificates, her documents, the things that proved she existed, that she had worked, that she had survived. There was no rush, no panic. Her heart felt steady in a strange way. Every item she placed in her bag felt like a quiet decision. With each fold, she let go of another hope she had been carrying for too long. Hope that one day they would change. Hope that one day they would see her. When she finished packing, Amina sat on the edge of the bed and took out a small piece of paper. She didn't write much. There were no accusations, no long explanations. Just a few simple lines. She wrote that she needed to leave, that she wished them well, that she was choosing peace. Her handwriting was calm, almost gentle. It surprised even her. She placed the note where it would be seen easily, then took one last look around the room. She didn't cry. She didn't hesitate. She picked up her bag, opened the door quietly, and stepped into the night. The air outside felt different, cooler, freer. For the first time in years she felt like she could breathe. By morning her room was empty. Her family noticed her absence slowly. Her mother assumed Amina was being dramatic. "She'll be back," she said, waving it off. Her father said nothing. Thandi laughed and said Amina always needed attention. No one panicked. No one called. They were sure she would return like she always had before, with lowered eyes and a soft apology. But this time was different. Amina did not come back begging. She did not explain herself. She did not ask for permission. As the sun rose higher, her family finally read the note again and again, confused by its calm tone. There was no anger to argue with, no guilt to use against her, just absence. And that absence was her unexpected goodbye. While they waited, confident she would return, Amina was already gone, walking toward a life where her worth would no longer be debated. Francistown did not welcome Amina with open arms. It welcomed her with noise, dust, and uncertainty. The first place she found to stay was small and worn down, with thin walls and a door that didn't always lock properly. It was cheap, and that was all that mattered. The mattress was hard, the room felt empty, and at night the silence was loud enough to make her chest ache. Some evenings she sat on the floor, hugging her knees, wondering if she had made a mistake. Finding work was even harder. She walked for hours, moving from one place to another, asking, applying, waiting. Most people barely looked at her. Some promised to call and never did. Rejection followed her everywhere. Every "we'll get back to you" felt heavy. There were days she came back to her room exhausted, her feet hurting, her confidence shaky. She counted coins before buying food. She skipped meals and told herself it was temporary. But something strange began to happen. No one was shouting at her. No one was comparing her to Thandi. No one was reminding her of her mistakes. The silence at first felt scary. Too quiet. Too empty. She was used to noise, to criticism, to always feeling small. Without it, she didn't know who she was supposed to be. Slowly, the silence started to feel like freedom. She took a job that paid little and demanded a lot. Long hours, tired muscles, early mornings. It wasn't glamorous, but it was hers. At the end of the day, when she locked her door, there was no one waiting to tear her down. No insults. No mocking laughter. Just her, alone with her thoughts. Some nights she cried from exhaustion. Other nights, she smiled for no reason, surprised by her own strength. Amina began to notice small changes. She stood a little straighter. She spoke with more confidence. Even when her voice shook, she started believing her effort mattered, even if no one clapped for her. She learned how to survive on her own terms. How to fix things, how to plan, how to trust herself. There were setbacks. Days when money ran low. Nights when loneliness hit hard. She missed having a family, even a broken one. But then she remembered the dinner table, the laughter, the words that cut too deep. And she reminded herself why she left. Piece by piece, brick by brick, Amina rebuilt herself. Not loudly. Not to prove anything to anyone. Just quietly, with determination. Every long day, every small win, added something back to her that had been taken away for years. She was starting from zero, yes. But for the first time in her life, zero felt honest. And from that honest place, she began to grow. Amina discovered that the very thing her family used to mock her for, the skill they laughed at, was her secret weapon. Growing up, she had spent hours drawing, writing, and creating little projects on her own. Her mother called it a waste of time. Thandi sneered and said it would never make her anything. But in Francistown, Amina began to see it differently. It was no longer something to hide. It was something that could survive, even thrive, if she dared to try. The first attempts were messy. She stayed up late into the night, working on small designs, sending proposals, making mistakes, and failing. People rejected her. Doors slammed. Sometimes she thought about quitting. It would have been easy. But there was a stubborn spark inside her, a quiet voice saying, "Keep going, they don't get to decide your worth." Every failure became a lesson. She learned to be patient with herself, to adjust, to take risks carefully but boldly. Slowly, the work started to gain attention. Small clients, tiny orders, people who appreciated her talent. It wasn't instant success, but it was hers. No one celebrated it. No one applauded. And that was exactly what Amina wanted. She remembered the way her family had always reacted. turning her pain into entertainment, twisting every achievement into a joke. She didn't want that this time. She wanted her effort to belong to her, and her alone. Her confidence began to grow quietly. With each project completed, she felt stronger. With each satisfied client, she realized she could survive and even excel without anyone validating her. The life she had imagined, one where she was always small, always invisible, was slowly changing. She didn't need anyone's approval to succeed. The silence that had once been lonely now felt like a shield, protecting her dreams. Amina also learned to take calculated risks. She tried new ideas, sometimes failed spectacularly, but always picked herself up. Each setback was a step forward. Her talent became sharper, her mind clearer, her determination fiercer. What had been a source of ridicule became her power. The skills they had mocked her for were finally paying off, quietly, without their interference, without their laughter. She kept her success hidden, small at first, then growing bigger in ways her family would never know. Sometimes she imagined telling them, imagining their shocked faces, but then she smiled, thinking, why give them the joy of my pain again? Why let them have that control? Instead, she focused on herself, her growth, her future. By the time she looked back, Amina realized she had created something extraordinary, not for anyone else, not for applause, but for herself, and that was more powerful than she had ever imagined. The girl who had been laughed at, mocked, and ignored had turned those very things into a ladder to rise above. Slowly, quietly, she was changing her life, and this time no one could stop her. Back in the family home, life didn't go as smoothly as they had expected. The Ndlovu family, who had always seemed so in control, suddenly found themselves struggling. Bills piled up faster than money could cover them. Investments that had seemed safe began failing. The parents, who had once prided themselves on appearances, started panicking. Their voices, once confident and commanding, grew sharper and more anxious. For the first time in years, things were unraveling, and there was no one to blame but themselves. Thandi, the miracle child, was not the perfect image they had always shown off. She failed exams she was supposed to ace, made mistakes at work, and couldn't handle the pressure. Her confidence wavered, and for the first time she looked lost. The family began to realize that the careful image of control they had built over the years was fragile. It wasn't just embarrassment, they were scared. And in that fear, their minds turned to the one person they had dismissed, the one they had ridiculed and ignored for years. Amina. Suddenly they wanted to know where she was. They asked distant relatives, made calls to old friends, and tried to trace her through mutual connections. "Have you heard from Amina?" her mother would ask, trying to sound calm, but her voice betrayed worry. "Maybe she can help us," her father said one night, pacing in the living room, pretending that his concern was natural. Even Thandi tried, hesitantly, as if she remembered how Amina had always been the responsible one, the one who could fix problems. It was the same house, the same walls, the same people, but everything had shifted. Suddenly, the girl they had treated like a mistake, the daughter they had laughed at, the one they believed would always come running back, was the solution they wished they had paid attention to years ago. Their calls and questions were polite on the surface, but Amina had taught them through absence that politeness and attention were not the same as love. They didn't know that Amina had grown strong, independent, and careful. They didn't know that their words and actions had driven her to leave, and that she was no longer the scared, eager-to-please girl they remembered. To them, she was a distant possibility, a tool for solving their sudden problems. They didn't realize that respect and concern could not be demanded after years of cruelty. And so, the family scrambled. They dressed up worry as care, asking about her life, her work, her plans, and if she could lend a hand. Every question was tinted with selfish hope. Every call was coated with regret they weren't ready to admit. But to Amina, these gestures were too little, too late. The people who once dismissed her pain were suddenly desperate for what they had always taken for granted. For the first time, the family saw clearly what they had lost. The daughter they had ignored was now a force in her own right, quietly thriving, unstoppable and untouchable. Their panic and worry were real, but they came wrapped in the same cruelty of expectation, just masked by feigned concern. And deep down, they feared that when they finally met her again, things would never go back to the way they imagined. The event was buzzing with energy, people networking, laughter and music filling the room. Amina walked in quietly, her posture straight, her eyes calm but alert. She had learned to move through the world without announcing herself, but tonight she didn't need to hide. The confidence she had built over the years wrapped around her like armor, and people noticed. Heads turned, subtle nods of respect followed her path. She carried herself like someone who belonged, like someone who had earned every inch of space she took. Then across the room she saw them, Ruth and Simon. Her mother's eyes widened, and her father's jaw tightened. They froze for a moment, unsure if what they were seeing was real. This was the daughter they had called a mistake, the one they had ignored, humiliated, and assumed would always return begging for forgiveness. But the Amina standing before them was not the scared, silenced child of their memory. She was poised, self-assured, untouchable. Every whispered story they had once laughed at, every insult they had ever thrown her way, was gone now, replaced by undeniable presence. People around them started noticing too. Whispers spread quickly. "Isn't that Amina Ndlovu? She's impressive. I heard she's doing incredible things." The murmurs swelled as more guests realized who she was. The truth could no longer be hidden behind polite excuses or family reputation. Amina's achievements were visible, undeniable, and earned without anyone's help. Ruth tried to compose herself, adjusting her hair, forcing a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Simon stepped forward, opening his mouth, then hesitating, unsure what to say. Thandi, who had once smirked at Amina's failures, looked smaller in comparison. Her confidence wavered as she realized the girl she had always looked down on had surpassed her in ways she never could. Amina didn't rush to speak. She let the moment stretch, letting them feel the weight of years of neglect and cruelty. Every glance they gave her was soaked in recognition and regret, but she didn't flinch, didn't soften. She had no need to explain herself. Their silence said enough. She had already spoken through her presence, through the calm power in her every movement, through the respect and admiration she commanded from strangers who didn't know her history but felt her strength. The room seemed to shift around them. Guests leaned in, curious. Whispers grew louder. Amina's reputation preceded her before she even spoke. The daughter they had treated like a mistake was now a force they could not ignore. In that moment, it became clear that their past actions had no hold on her anymore. She was untouchable, undeniable, and thriving, and there was nothing they could do to change it. For Amina, the reunion was quiet but explosive. No anger, no revenge, just truth. She had arrived, fully herself, and the people who had doubted her, laughed at her, and dismissed her were forced to see what they had lost, and what they could never take back. The room was still buzzing with whispers when it happened. Ruth's hands trembled, her composed mask slipping for the first time. She stepped forward, tears streaming down her face, voice cracking. "Amina. I'm so sorry," she said, choking on the words. The words sounded small against the weight of everything she had done, or rather, everything she hadn't done. The years of ridicule, of dismissals, of ignoring her pain, all stretched before Amina like shadows. Yet Ruth's apology came loud, public, and desperate. Amina stood perfectly still, her eyes calm, watching her mother crumble. There was no sudden rage, no heated confrontation. The humiliation Ruth had caused her over the years was mirrored now in her mother's own breakdown. But Amina felt none of the relief they might have expected. She had learned long ago that apologies after years of cruelty could not erase the past. She listened, quietly, letting Ruth speak, letting the sobs fill the space between them. Her father stepped forward next, hesitant, his pride struggling against the shame he now felt. "Amina, can you forgive me?" he asked, his voice low, almost pleading. The question was heavy, and Amina could see the fear in his eyes. The fear of realizing that respect and love could not be demanded, that time lost could not be given back. She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she let him stand there, feeling the weight of the years he had ignored her. He had ignored her struggles, her achievements, her tears. Now, he waited for a response that was never owed. Thandi, who had always smirked at her sister's pain, looked frozen. Her eyes darted from Amina to their parents, disbelief written across her face. She realized, perhaps for the first time, that Amina had grown beyond her reach. The sister she thought she could always look down on had become unshakable, untouchable. Thandi said nothing, but the silence between them spoke volumes. Amina finally spoke, her voice steady, quiet and clear. Not in anger, not in shame, not in hurt, but in truth. "I hear you," she said softly. "I hear everything you're saying. But the girl you treated like a mistake is gone. She's not here anymore. And the woman you see, she doesn't need your approval." Every word landed deliberately, each one measured, reflecting the years she had endured. She did not cry. She did not shout. She simply allowed the truth to hang in the air, undeniable and unshakable. The room fell silent. Everyone felt it, the shift from power to understanding, from cruelty to consequence. Ruth sobbed openly. Her father's eyes were wet, his head lowered in shame. Thandi remained stunned, realizing that everything she had assumed about her sister's weakness was wrong. Amina's quiet presence carried more weight than any argument, any confrontation ever could. For the first time, they experienced what Amina had felt all those years: the waiting, the helplessness, the powerless silence of being ignored. And in that quiet, Amina held all the strength she had built alone, letting them see what they had lost. The apology, the regret, the tears, it was all too late. Amina took a deep breath and looked at them, the faces that had ignored her, mocked her, and made her feel small for years. She didn't shout. She didn't cry. She spoke with a calmness that carried more power than any anger could. "I've listened," she said softly, her voice steady. "I've heard every word of your apologies, every tear, every regret. And I understand it's too late for that to change anything." She paused, letting the words sink in. Her mother's hand shook. Her father's eyes were downcast. Thandi stared, unable to speak, caught between shock and realization. "The girl you wished away," Amina continued, "the one you ignored, criticized, and laughed at, that girl doesn't exist anymore. She's gone. She had to be, because she would have stayed small for you, waited for your approval, begged for your love. But I'm not that girl. I'm the woman I chose to become, with or without you." Her words were quiet, but every syllable carried the weight of years of pain, struggle, and survival. She didn't need them to clap, to cheer, or to admit their wrongs fully. She didn't need validation. The strength she had built in silence, the life she had created from nothing, spoke louder than any apology or explanation could. Then she turned slowly, letting her gaze linger for a moment on the people who had once controlled her world. She walked toward the door with steady steps, confident, untouchable, free. The room was silent except for the faint rustle of her clothes and the click of her heels. She didn't look back. She didn't need to. The weight of her words, and the truth they carried, stayed behind, heavier than any regret they could express. Amina left them there, forced to face the consequences of their own cruelty, their own neglect, their own failure to see her worth. And as she stepped into the world that belonged to her alone, she finally felt the full freedom she had earned, the freedom of being seen, not as a mistake, but as the woman she had fought to become.